Ravens Fall by Claire Casey, Chapter 12. Tobias held the burning torch that he was carrying as high as he possibly could. By doing so, he had hoped that he would light more of his way, only to discover that the darkness refused to give way to the light. As he peered into the shadows, the darkness unnerved him. He was certain that anything could be watching him from the shadows, and he would never know about it. Despite his fears, no one had crossed his path since he had gone into the cellars. The last person he had met had been on the upper floors of the palace, where it was light and the shadows weren't threatening to overwhelm him. The silence that filled those subterranean corridors echoed back at him, as if challenging him over why he was down there at all. He had been told to meet the others down in the deepest of the cellars, but he was still certain that he was lost. Everywhere he turned, there were chambers that were filled with a variety of different things. Some were filled with barrels, the contents of which remained a mystery to him. Other chambers were filled with furniture that had been discarded and forgotten about. There were many other rooms that he had not entered. As he continued to walk, he wasn't inclined to discover what lay behind any more doors. He'd only been in the cellars once before, when he'd first met the others to discuss their plan of action. It all seemed comfortable enough with their surroundings. It had been decided to meet in a slightly different part of the cellar on this occasion, in the hope of throwing off anyone off their scent. But in the darkness, Tobias found that each of the corridors looked the same, as each one seemed to stretch on for eternity. Spotting a mark on the wall that he hadn't seen before, Tobias lowered his torch to have a better look at it. Breathing a sigh of relief, he recognised it as a sign that the others had decided to use for the rebellion. It was a symbol that only those in the know had recognised. He was going in the right direction. He just needed to be on the lookout for the next one, which would mark his route and guide him on his way. As his thoughts turned back to his mother, he refused to dwell on what she would do to him if she knew what he was up to. She would have done all that she could to show him the error of his ways and set him back on what she thought was the right path. But after what he had seen, he couldn't sit back and do nothing, no matter what his mother thought he should be doing. It felt as if the whole of Arla was screaming for help, and no one was willing to do anything about it. Having joined the council after his father's death, he hadn't been in Freewell long, and still found it strange. The noise, the smells, the way that people spoke and moved. It still felt alien, and nothing like home. He had his own apartment within the palace. It wasn't as if he was uncomfortable or was wanting for anything. Tobias simply felt as if he couldn't be further from what he had known all his life. The Riverlands, where he had grown up, had always been peaceful. Now he was the lord of those lands, and the responsibility for it all fell to him. He wanted nothing more than to be back at his home at Waterfall's Leap. If he had voiced that wish, his mother would have none of it. He had responsibilities, not just to his own family, but to Arla as well. And he would fulfil those responsibilities, no matter how much he wished that he didn't. He had written to her on a few occasions since his arrival in Freewell, but only received the odd sporadic letter from her in response. All of them were filled with dry news of the Riverlands. She had never been one for being overly affectionate. Duty had always come first in her eyes. After coming to Freewell with the hopes of changing things for the better, Tobias felt exhausted by the constant fight to stand by his morals. He had seen some of the other lords glancing at him out of the corner of their eyes before whispering amongst themselves. He didn't have to hear them to know that he was the butt of some joke or another. Hearing footsteps in the darkness, he stopped dead in his tracks, straining his eyes to see anything in the shadows beyond his torch's reach. As he tried to speak, he found that his voice was barely more than a whisper. "Who's there?" A fellow traveller in the darkness, came the whispered answer. Hearing the agreed-upon response, Tobias lowered his torch. As he did so, a large figure emerged from the darkness. Calm was the Lord of Dunlevern, the breadbasket of Arla, and he looked every inch of it.